Hey, it's Leslie Chapman here with your Harris County. It has been a while since I've done videos consistently. There's a number of reasons for it, but here's the deal. I'm back. I'm back, I'm charged up, and I'm ready to get more consistent in doing live videos on a weekly basis at a minimum once a week. I've been doing, lives with open houses and different things and been maintaining my stories, but bringing you the content that you need. I am going to commit to getting back to that, the content that you want to hear. So here's the thing. Today has been an amazing day. Couple contracts in the works, looking for approvals on a commercial deal and a residential deal. So today is a really good day. I can't commit necessarily. I used to commit to the time, say 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but as things have shown, things happen throughout the day. Thankfully, business is going well, working with a number of clients, got a lot of irons in the fire with them, and that's a great thing. Another thing I wanted to bring up, another point I wanted to bring up is I've been really blessed in my first year of going full time as a real estate agent to be exposed to a number of types of transactions. I've done commercial leases, I've done residential leases, residential sales, land deals, and that's made room for more of those types of deals. So my learning curve, I guess it has been steep, but that's been good because there's nothing like experience. Experience is the best teacher, right? And so I've gained a lot of experience and knowledge into a number of areas that I otherwise would not have been familiar with. I've also made some inroads in the distress, what they call the distressed areas, because I do a lot of valuations for properties that are um, where there's delinquents in payments, 30, 60-day late notices. So I provide valuations, and some of those properties may end up in foreclosure. So I am, venturing off into that space. But today's focus really is on leasing homes in particular. So in working with clients and seeing what's out there, this is what we're working with. You've had people we've had an eviction moratorium for 18 months, so landlords couldn't really evict people who weren't paying. And granted, with the situation with the pandemic and jobs changes in the workforce and people's income being affected, people were probably late. Now, I'm not saying this is all the case. Some may have taken advantage of the situation, but whether that's neither here nor there. The issue is if there were late pays and people were not able to, or landlords weren't able to evict, some of them, had challenges because as a landlord, and I'm one, you still got to make the mortgage payment whether the tenant pays or not, right? Okay, so here we are. We fast forward to the eviction moratorium has ended, and now we're looking in the market as people are looking for homes to lease, and probably the same for apartments, but I'm really focusing on homes that are leasing, and we're seeing that landlords they're making tighter requirements, 600 score or better, 620 or better. I was talking to a friend last night who was saying she'd even seen one 750 or better. So they're coming up with criteria that they want met before they even consider leasing, their property, or they want the applicants to meet this criteria. All right. So what can you do to set yourself apart? Because everybody was affected. Landlords were affected, and on the opposite side, tenants were affected. So if you are in a situation where you may have the funds, but your credit is questionable, it may be at 610 and not 620, or it may be at 610 and not 650, or whatever they're asking you for. You're like, well, what can I do? Do I even have a chance? Well, it may be slimmer than someone who has a credit score of 700 and they have the capital, but that doesn't mean that it's totally ruled out. What I'm finding that's a bit disconcerting is that when you work with some of these companies, like larger lease companies that buy a lot of houses and then they lease them, they fix them up and lease them, they send you to these websites where you go and you apply, you fill out the application. And honestly, what they do is they just run the algorithms, right? The report spits back these numbers and they say, hey, you're accepted or you're denied. I think that's unfortunate. I see that that's the trend and where we're heading. And I feel like that's unfortunate because you can't just it's so much more than just looking at the numbers. You have a human being on the other side of it, a human being who in the past 5 years may have had some good times and may have had some tough times. How far back do these credit reports go? I'm not sure, but it doesn't really take that into account. If you are looking to lease and you end up with a landlord who runs their own background check or has their agent run their own background check, I think that's a more powerful position because then the story can come with it. The agent can speak the story on your behalf and relay that. When you just rely on these algorithms, they just spit out the number and people make decisions off of that and don't really take into account the whole picture. At least that's my opinion. I know I'm not the only agent that feels that way. Maybe it's the empathetic side, but I know for me as a landlord, I keep that into consideration that there's not just a number, there's a person there, there's a story there, there's a family there, and take that into consideration. So let's talk about what you can do to set yourself apart? Well, first of all, know your credit because one of the things that you have to do is submit an application. They run a background check and they're checking for your credit. They're checking for criminal history. They're checking for, I mean, they do a screening and then everybody wants to be screened. And they also want to verify that you have the capital to be able to pay, to make your monthly payments. So they have that criteria. But you going in armed with your knowledge of where you stand credit wise will be helpful because that can also help tailor your search. It can save you time. It could save your agent time if you're working with an agent. And so you could focus on properties that meet, your criteria or that where you meet the criteria. It's aligned and you can save time there. And it also helps you if you have an agent that's willing to tell the story, if there's something that's adversely on your credit or something that might be viewed as an adverse marking on it, you can talk about it. We can get ahead of that as opposed to them just relying on what they see and then making decisions off of there. You can say the story. For example, what if there was a delinquent or something, a late pay or something from 5 years ago? You can get ahead of that and say, hey, 5 years, I know you're going to see this 5 years ago, blah, 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 blah. This is what happened. That, my client is making provisions to resolve that or they have resolved it. I can provide you the documentation or here's the documentation that says it. Like those are things that will help in the process when you're looking. So know your credit history, flag anything. Well, the items that there are anything that are red flags or would be considered a red flag, call that out. The more transparent you could be in the beginning up front, in other words, um, if you can overcome the objections that they would have before they had those objections, the better for you. All right, so keep that in mind. And the second point is make your offer stand out. How can you do that when you are leasing? You can do that by a number of ways. What if you can put down more than just a 1 month deposit? Can you pay for several months in advance? That could be an option. Could you maybe extend to 2 years? It is easier. A landlord would prefer someone who's committed to staying in there for 2 years than someone that's staying in there for one. Reason being, the amount of work that it takes to clear out and fix up and repair a property after a tenant leaves, it's costly. So if they know that they at least for 2 years someone's going to be in there and not want to move, that's easier on the landlord. So would you be willing to do a 2-year lease? That's something to consider longer term so that they know that they're going to get consistent money. Could you put down a double deposit more than a 1 month deposit, so a 1 month security deposit? Could you put down double? Could you put down triple? Those are things that help you. We had a tenant that actually came to us. We had a couple tenants. One came with terms that said they wanted an 18-month lease at, I think it was $50 less if we did 18 months. We said, yeah. Why? Because we didn't want to be cleaning it up after 1 year. We were like, good, 18 months. that tenant is still there. It's 4 years later. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, things like that happen. We had another tenant that paid like 10 months in advance. Okay, they paid 10 months the first year and then paid the balance, but they paid it up front. They wanted it up front. They wanted to make sure that their living arrangements were secure during that time. And this was happening during the midst of the pandemic, so it was probably concerned about that. Okay, so that was year 1. What happened year 2? They paid 6 months in advance, and then they're paying the rest of the balance the rest of the year. My point is, you may come across landlords who think like my husband and I do, who are open to that. Now, all are not open to that, but we are. We're like, what? We get this money up front? Yeah. That's how the Chapmans roll. So we did that. And so you may come across landlords who are definitely open to that. Getting a bunch of money up front, and then because we still got to make the mortgage payment regardless. But hey, if they want to pay 7,000 up right now, and then pay the balance 800 later on, okay, we're good. We're good with that. So there are options. My whole point is, if you know your credit history and if you can bargain, you can help your agent if you bring something to the table. What else can you bring to the table? If you can bring other things to the table, discuss those things, and that increases your bargaining power in getting you finding a place for you to lease. Now, I'm not saying all these ideas are lock, stock, and barrel as a shoe in. I mean, the market is what the market is, but you can better tailor your approach if you know what the landlords are expecting, what criteria, and if you can meet those criteria. And if there's anything that there's a flag, get ahead of that, note that, bring it up front before they bring it up to your attention, and then also come with other ways that you can bring something to the table. And this way you position yourself to better land your next home that you want to lease. All right. So those of you who are watching, I'm back. Follow me, Your Harris County. Subscribe to my channel, Your Harris County. Like this video and share this video. Until next time, take care.